former discussion was Pan-American, East Coast, West Coast. This one is European or Pan-European. So from Krakow, we are moving now to the Netherlands. And,
Belgium.
Belgium, but you also used to work for Dutch institutions.
Yes.
So it's Brussels, Amsterdam with the Stedelijk, also Rijksmuseum. But Tamara Berghmans is now at FotoMuseum Antwerp. She's an eminent curator, scholar, author of texts and books and articles about theory of photography, but also history of photography, not only in Belgium, but also photo book. The Dutch photo book is your topic. We are all expecting her book on Ed van der Elsken, and she just, I can see, brought another book, The Eye of the Photographer, she will talk about. So please, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. In the first place, I would like to thank the organization and Carolina, of course, for inviting me here in Warsaw to speak on this seminar. My presentation, I also changed the title a little bit, like Francois, but not the content. It's called Hoarding or Collecting, Redefining the Museum, a Work in Progress. In May 2013, the hoarding disorder officially became a new psychiatric diagnosis and was included in the latest edition of the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Compulsive hoarding, or pathological collecting, is only just beginning to be recognized. Hoarding disorder occurs in an estimated 2 to 5% of the population. Some of you may ask yourself why this is of any importance. Others among us may start blushing and feeling addressed. The line between being a hoarder and a collector can be very, very thin. But hoarding is not the same as collecting. Collectors, they look for specific items and may organize or display them. People with hoarding disorder excessively save items and have persistent difficulty getting rid of or parting with possessions, leading to clutter that disrupts to use their living or workspace. Like I said, it can feel very familiar. In every collector lurks a hoarder. Everybody here knows the feeling. The question is how to treat compulsive hoarding in a museum context. Here you see the FotoMuseum in Antwerp. Almost 4 years ago, I started working in the FoMu, the FotoMuseum Antwerp, first as a curator of temporary exhibitions, and since March this year, as curator at the collection department. The museum was founded almost 50 years ago in 1965, and today we work with a collection of 750,000 images, most of them negatives, 25,000 cameras, and 32,000 photographic publications. So we have a nice collection and a very good photographic scientific library. In the next slides, I will show you a few of our exhibition spaces. This is the second floor, and this is the fourth floor. So we have 1,400 square meters of exhibition space. Of course, a collection is more than the sum of its parts. It's a carefully woven fabric that develops gradually and through repeated additions. And first maybe some comments, I will just show you a few images of the collection just to illustrate what we have. So when in 1965, a group of photo historians and photography lovers who were working at the Gevaert Photo Company in Antwerp started a photo and film department within the Provincial Museum of Decorative Arts in Antwerp, they didn't have a clue about collecting. Only in 1980, François, especially for you, in 1980, Paul Andries, an art historian, would become curator of the photography collection. 6 years later, in 1986, the photography department gained autonomy in the present-day museum. Paul Andries, he would work for 30 years in the museum, but he just retired last year, so it's the new era. In all those years, collecting meant for the FotoMuseum the story of the history of photography, told from the very early beginnings right up until today, and seen from a broad and international perspective, but at the same time, paying particular attention to specific Belgian situations and the special contributions of Belgian photographers, scientists, and entrepreneurs. This is the first picture that Paul Andries bought when he started working in the museum in 1980. It's a big story around it. Well, collections usually have clear beginnings, a starting point with clearly defined ambitions, but the expansion of a collection typically follows a meandering path with delays and accelerations, sudden enlargements of scale, moments of despair, and standstill. The curriculum of our collection is to a large degree the sediment of a perception and a reception history, which is often just as relevant as the facts and developments to which they relate. I think we can say that the collection profile of the FotoMuseum can be called a happy result of a panoramic approach to the phenomenon of photography, or the problematic consequence of the refusal to make clearly defined choices. Looking back on the collecting activities of those first year, we are really struck by the intuitive and pragmatic handling of the complexity of the subject material. There were hardly any selection criteria. Everything that was directly or indirectly related to photography was illegible. This means that at the origin, our collection is very diversified. Today, it is still our wealth, but also our burden. Like many museums, such as the FotoMuseum in Munich or the Musée Niepce in Chalon-sur-Saône, we departed from a medium historical approach. In the 1980s, with Paul Andries, the collection became more artistic-oriented. But the FotoMuseum is not an art museum in strict sense. We are a photography museum, and photography as a medium is rooted deeply in the social life. Today, we face a number of key challenges what collecting concerns. The FotoMuseum, we must again decide where we want to position ourselves in the national and international field of photography, because Antwerp was relatively early in establishing a photographic collection, which gave us a significant lead. But we lost this privileged position for a great part, since networks and budgets also changed. And we don't have the budgets to act competitively. This is a frustration, of course, but also a relief. We don't have to compete with our big brothers. We have the freedom to do what we want, to look for alternative tracks, to try out local variations of the international model. In half a century, the museum has changed. We are working with a very young and a new team, so I think it is time to look back at the choices made in the past, to shed light on the collection of today, and to reflect on the future of our collecting policy. This is why we are redefining our museum and start preparing a new collection plan that should be ready by the end of 2014. Well, maybe new is not the correct word. I think there never really existed a real written and consistent plan before. So our main question is, what kind of museum is a FotoMuseum today, and what do we want to be? I have to admit, I didn't come here today to give answers. I will ask some more questions, of course. So one of these questions is, how will we differentiate ourselves from other photography museums? Because a lot of photography collections from different countries, they're just exchangeable. They have the same photographers, the same photographic canon, only the spaces and the locations of all these photography collections are different, and we are not, we're also like that. So what is today the strength of the FotoMuseum? We are not the perfect museum, but which museum is? Lack of staff, reducing budgets, a rapid succession of directors. This is nothing new in the museum world. And in our mission statement, we wrote that the FotoMuseum, we want to be the center of expertise and meeting in Flanders for contemporary and historical photography in all its forms, with a focus on Belgian photography. We are not a private museum. We are partially funded by the province of Antwerp and the Flemish government. As some of you may know or not know, Belgium is a very complex country. We are divided in a Flemish and in a Walloon region. The FotoMuseum is a Flemish museum in the northern Dutch-speaking part. And we also have this Flemish etiquette from our funding, from the politics. But we must not only ask ourselves how we want to deal with this unwanted and unsolicited Flemish status in the future, but also how we want to profile ourselves to the other museum of photography in Belgium, the Musée de la Photographie in Charleroi, in the French southern-speaking region. Because Belgian photography can't be divided in geographical criteria or on the language of a photographer. Another question we must ask ourselves is, how do we deal with the diversity of our collection? Because our photography collection can be divided in a museum and in a study collection. We possess historical and contemporary masterpieces in the history of photography, but also very banal examples of the photographic professional practice, science and police photographs, family albums, negatives, glass plates, examples of all kinds of photographic and photomechanical techniques, vernacular photography, etc., etc. I will now sum up a few dates of important acquisitions. So when we look at the chronology, the exhibition with the title 125 Years of Photography that was organized in 1965 marks the beginning of our photohistorical collection. In 1966, the City of Antwerp's print department transferred the archive and the library of the Association Belge de Photographie, the Belgian Association of Photography. It's really a unique fund of 19th and 20th century literature, and also an important group of works by Pierre Dubreuil. And after the merger of the two companies Agfa and Gevaert in 1966, the company donates the photo archive of the publication department. This means that the majority of the photographs that were published in the magazine Photorama, such as Brassailles, Robert Doisneau, Bouba, Fulvio Reuter, but also important representatives of the subjective photography from Belgium, Netherlands, Germany and Italy were in this collection. In 1978, one of our major acquisitions, a very important collection that was acquired by the FotoMuseum, is an important part of the Fritz Gruber collection in Cologne, which includes works by William Klein, also the Man Rays that you saw before, Bruce Davidson, Edward Steichen, Edward Weston will also be in it, August Sander, a big collection. So other acquisitions, important acquisitions, was in 1990. We had a project sponsorship to supplement our collection of post-war American photographers, such as Stephen Shore, but also Nicholas Nixon, Les Grims, Harry Callahan, Louis Baltz, Robert Adams, etc. In 1992, we received another project sponsorship that made it possible to supplement our collection of 19th century Belgian photographers. Here you see Louis Guémard, but also Gilbert Radou, Edmond Vierland, and many others. We don't only have a museum collection, we also have a few archives of Belgian photographers. Today, we talked about it yesterday, and we are a museum that has archives of photographers and doesn't always do a lot with them because we don't have the budget or the money. We made an exhibition of Philippe Tas and Frank Filippi, and we're also planning a few, but being a museum and working with archives is not an easy task. I think we can all agree on that. So we have to ask ourselves how we want to continue and how we want to handle this amount of images, documents, also digital archives, etc. So by 2015, we would like to research the possibilities of systematically developing and extending an archive of Belgian photography. This is something we can't and we don't want to do alone. We will need to cooperate with a lot of institutions in Belgium. But I think it's important to develop a policy around photography archives because we have the responsibility to guarantee the preservation but also the enhancement of the Belgian photographic heritage. Also with these specific goals in mind, next year we will start building a new storage facility next door to our museum, a 6-story building which will house our main core collection of the museum. Then, of course, we have also cameras. And our camera collection is a complicated case because it is both administrative and substantive difficult to manage. This is an old presentation of the Kaiser panorama. With the acquisition of both the Michel Auer collection from Geneva in 1973 and the Agfa Historama collection in 2006, our historical camera collection is quite world famous for its size and diversity. The digital evolution of the camera is rather incomplete in the collection. The main question now is how to integrate the cameras in exhibitions and publications without falling in a technical discourse, of course. These are just a few examples of the many things that we have. So it is important to look for new formats to valorize the photograph and the camera collection and to sharpen our collection profile. Something that in the future will be important is to start collecting series of a specific photographer instead of focusing on single images, as has happened very often in the past. We also want to promote and follow up Belgian photography, historical and contemporary, not only in collecting Belgian photography. Here you see an example. We just bought a big collection of Willy Kessels, a Belgian modernist photographer, with the help of extra funding of the province. So not only in collecting, but also in the field of promoting, exhibiting, and research. Because this is really an era in which we can make, thanks to our expertise, the difference. Something else that we started last year is a yearly poster magazine called TIFF. I have some of them with me, so you can have a look afterwards. In which we select every year 10 very young Belgian photographers. We don't exhibit their works in the museum, but we show them in a qualitative and alternative way. So every photographer has a poster. And each year we will also purchase the works of some of these photographers. I think we also of course, have to concentrate on the important tendencies in the international field of photography, but always connected to our specific Belgian situation. Because our exhibition program is very diverse and international. We also produce a lot of exhibitions ourselves, and we also try to collaborate with other institutions. We will make a retrospective of Jeffrey Silverthorne with Musée Niepce. And we also have, there's also a link with our collection. We have works of Silverthorne in our collection. We already showed him in 1991. What is actually, besides our temporary exhibitions, we also show our collection. But for more than a decade, the FotoMuseum didn't put her collection on display. Only since 2011, we show a semi-permanent thematic exhibition that will change every 3 years. That includes photographs and cameras. And we also publish a catalog with it. So this is the first catalog, but every 3 years we will do the same. Different themes, of course. So it's also important for us to have interaction between the exhibition and the collection policy, because exhibiting our permanent collection places the work in a broader perspective, valorizes sub-collections, and we also try to acquire works from temporary international exhibitions so they can complement our permanent collection. What we also saw that in the past, it was very difficult to say no to people who came by with their carton box full of images and cameras, because we didn't have a policy for this. So we don't want to break with our past, but I think it's important that we work out a sharper collection profile using specific collecting criteria. We still want to make willful choices, breaking with the traditional canon, choosing for images that enrich and are relevant in our specific collection. And we still want to focus on the photograph as an object and also purchase vintage material, although we also have to take into account the evolution of digital-born material and maybe the idea of developing a virtual collection. So we can't correct all the lacunae in our collection, but this is not necessary anymore, because in the future we don't want to be hoarders but collectors. Thank you.